Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCG live codes, make sure you check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using that code OmniPoke. For today's video, we have the Week 1 results in the Paldea Evolved format for the online tournaments. We have 9 events to go over today that are all 64 players or more, and some really interesting deck lists and archetypes are showing up in the early stages. So this is from June 10th up to June 14th as of recording, with some of the largest tournaments that we've had so far. We start off with the Late Night Special 4, and this is a 902 record with Guardy. I think this is the presumptive best deck in the game going into this format, and already we're seeing that it is standing up and living up to that hype. I think we all expect Guardy to do very well. Some interesting cards in this deck list, choosing to only play 3 Curlier and have that higher count of rare candy gives you that explosive turn to potential, that little bit more, which can be handy in mirror match situations, and just getting your stuff out of range from Lost Box players in the opening can be really important as well. We're seeing the Artisan come in over the Temple of Sinnoh. Now that could be a PTCG live thing because Sinnoh is actually one of the sort of buggier cards right now, but this is in any case just a decent consistency slot. Also, I guess because with less Curliers, less levelable, although I still feel like this should always be a 4 count. Really like the supporter lineup. Love to see the Super Odds coming in, and just sticking with 1 Reversal Energy. Obviously, this is a pretty strong shell to look at. I think a number of people will be debating between 4 Curlier, 4 Levelball, and 4 Rare Candy. That's kind of the juggling space I can see from this list. But outside of that, very streamlined, very strong 60 starting things off, which is great. So a great starting point for anyone looking to pick up some Guardy. We then have Lugia, which has this big question mark around it, whether we jump ship to the colourless build, or if people are liking the single strike build, the sort of tried and trusted. And I think it is going to be metagame dependent. Of course, you've got to dodge your Duraludon with this build. We have no way of beating them. And I think this is slightly weaker in the mirror match compared to single strike. But I think this is stronger against Guardy, and I think it's stronger against Lost Box, which is already quite a good matchup, but just strong anyway. And I think this can deal with Path quite well, just because you have naturally just things that you can turn attach to in the opening stages. So you have time to Summoning Star a little bit more than the single strike builds, which literally just have to pass essentially if they don't have it come together. But yeah, this is another example of that colourless style build. It's got some Bravery Charms in here to push Snorlax out of range. Really frustrating for like Arceus players and other lower damage output decks, where you can just make that Snorlax, you know, push it out of range, especially with V-Guard energy as well. Can be a bit of a frustration. We have the Luxray Reversal combo, which I think is pretty staple for the colourless build. Nothing too surprising here, where we are seeing the double collapsed. I think it's really good in this build because you have so many single prize Pokemon that you can get rid of your fishes quite nicely and represent an entirely 1 prize board at different points. So yeah, very, very solid 60. I think a lot of the time we have started to see Lugia shift away from the Serena supporter and just play higher boss count, and I think that's because we are starting to push even further down an EX direction. So that's a small note. It is more punishing to just play 2 boss and 1 Serena these days, especially because we're in an Iono format, which we're all aware of course, but it just means sometimes you have to have that extra, like, better safe than sorry count, just so that you see them more, even when you're being reduced to lower hand sizes throughout the game. Of course, you have gift energies, but they're, you know, sometimes shut down by Temple and whatnot. But yeah, colourless doing pretty well. Then we have the chien-pao.palkia actually making 3 spaces in this top 8. All with some different builds here. And this is one that I'm still really exploring. I think exploring is the right word to use for the Chien-Pao backs deck, because we're seeing all sorts of differences here. We're seeing in this list quite a thin Baxcalibur, just a 2/2 count. I'm actually playing the 70 hit point Friggy Backs. The upside, of course, is 10 hit points. The downside is an extra colourless in the retreat cost, which can be a little bit awkward at times, so you can't just easily attach retreat and get into Chien-Pao and whatnot. But yeah, just a 2/2 Baxcalibur, very, very thin on bat count. Is playing the 3 rare candy. It feels kind of strange to play the additional candy and whatnot, but there we go. I suppose you do have Rod for recycle, so I guess it does end up being rather logical. But yeah, the thick Barrel, the thick Palkia, just the 2 Chien-Pao EX with Manaphy and Greninja. We're not seeing Kyogre, we're not seeing Luminion in this list. which is somewhat of a surprise. I think Luminion, at the very least, is a really, really strong card. What we are seeing, though, is the Pokestop. This is another point of contention for the chien-pao lists. Whether we go Pokestop, Lost City, Skaters Park, or a mixture of all of those things, alongside Vacuum, which can be Irida searchable, of course. I have only just started experimenting with the cross-switcher build. The list I did yesterday for the channel was Pokestops with just bosses. But of course, you get additional value with the Pokestop with the cross-switchers in here. They just take up a few more spaces. Seeing 4 cross-switcher and 2 rope give you a lot of ways to just push things out of the way. Double cancelling clone in the deck list as well. This can be used to shut down Manaphy, of course, which is kind of the main intention here. So you can bring up Manaphy, cancel out the ability, and then most likely just snipe 2 other things. Normally it's going to be Gardevoirs that have self-damaged themselves down to a low enough amount of hit points to knock out alongside like Curlier's, Ralts, that sort of thing. And of course against Lost Box you'll probably target Comphase. So very solid option. It can also come in handy against Ting Lu EX, where you can turn off their Land's Curse ability, I want to say it's called, so that you can actually use your own stuff, which is also strong. The Avery is an interesting card. We're playing quite a wacky supporter lineup. Just the 4 Irida, 1 Iono, 1 Avery. I definitely would like to see an extra copy of Iono. It's just such a powerful card to have in general. To only have access to it once in the game feels quite sad. But Avery is a decent tech card. Can be nice in mirror match situations. Can be nice against Gardevoir players. It's just a frustrating card to play around, especially when we're always threatening the snipe pressure, right? Of those 3 bench Pokemon, one of them always has to be Manaphy. Or they have to get rid of the things that you would want to be protecting with the Manaphy anyway, so you still kind of reverse engineer a good situation for you, essentially, is the idea. I really am liking Pokestop, whether it's with cross-switchers or with just more conventional supporters. I'm still trying to figure that out, but I think, personally, just by how setup-based the deck is, I really like Pokestops. I'm really sort of landing on that direction, but we will see a lot of successful lists with a variety of stadiums today. Like I've just mentioned. So here we go. People are playing around with accounts. In this case, it's a thinner Palkia, a thicker Baxcalibur with a 3/3 count going to the 60 hit point Frigibax, the 3 rare candy, the more conventional supporter line of high Iono, high Irida as the sort of fullback plays. And then we have the Lost Cities and the Skaters Park. The upside of Lost City, of course, you can remove Manaphy from play so it can't be recycled. And even if you're just knocking out, you know, Crams, Sableyes, Curliers, Ralts, those sorts of Pokemon, they can't recover them, which is, again, sort of depleting that board state, which is nice. And the upside of Skaters Park is that you get to retreat out of stuff but not actually have to pay that cost. You get them straight back to hand, which is nice. And this list is quite cheeky on the switch outs. It's playing 1 Skaters Park, 1 rope only. So really, really light on those pivot options. I think you have to play at least 1 more, honestly, but they've tried to gain a space. And the last 2 lists we've looked at only play 9 energy as well, which I think is interesting, because I've seen as high as 11. A lot of the time I see 10 being at sticking point, so people are being quite cheeky with that low water count. We then see an Rapid Strike box doing quite well in the top 8. It has scrapped the double Drapion for the Spiritomb, which is definitely this interesting tech card which could be coming in and out based on where we are in the metagame to try and counter the Mew players, and that's really what you're hoping for. It's still a little bit of a soft answer because there are fusion energy around, and you know, even now we've started to see Ice Cube go into some of the fusion builds where they can just snipe the Spiritomb and then you're still in trouble. But this deck is solid against other things and plays around Iono quite well because you can weave together multi-prize turns thanks to Metacham and thanks to this sort of stuff. Outside of that, it's kind of a similar engine that we've seen before, but more reliance on Iono than research, so you don't have to throw away some awkward stuff. But yeah, seems to be still a reasonable deck in the meta. We then have our next chien-pao, and this is just playing 1 stadium, 1 vacuum, but a lot higher on the energy count, and is playing another interesting attacker in the Basculin. Never thought I'd see this card, especially for a deck that is happy to take 1-hit KOs. Having a card that sort of finishes off things sounds really weird, but I suppose this can be like an easy 1-prize attacker into Guardy, I guess is the logic, that it's like cheap and efficient, I suppose. I'm not super sold by that, to be honest. You have Rain Splash. Never forget Rain Splash on Manaphy, guys. God. But yeah, this is just another take on it. Really light on the ball search, just the one nest. Has double Luminion, and yeah, this is playing no Big Barrel either. So just very bulky on actual supporter cards, which I suppose there's something to be said there of just get into the game turn 1 and feel good about it. We have a Goodra, utilizing a few new cards. As you can see, Goodra previously wasn't too happy about the Mew matchup, so getting to play Spiritomb is always nice. Gets to play Jet Energy now as well to sort of speed up your selecting combinations, which is always a good thing to see. We're seeing Artisans in here as well, just to help that early game stability of getting those Cram and Comfey developed. And it's playing Rod as well, so yeah, a lot of new cards coming into the deck list. And Goodra seemingly is still a reasonable choice. We have the 1 Iono, 1 Roxanne, so you finally have a more proactive hand disruptor against lost boxes, but still have that sort of power spike late game supporter card that you can go for. A lot of juggle going on. You don't always see the Sableye in Goodra builds and that sort of third count of energy. But I suppose because we've gone away from the Melanie, we have that freedom to go heavy on the gates and just have Psychic and Jet Energy to fulfill that colorless cost at times. That's kind of the logic there. Quite a lot of 1 prizes going on in the list. Not really leaning that heavily into the goo, but does have that option. And then we end on a single strike build of Lugia. So we've seen in that top 8, one of each of the Lugias, the colorless and the single strike. This one, even though it is single strike, is still incorporating the Luxray reversal package. We know it's strong for Mirror. We know that it's strong against Palkia as well. And it seems like almost all the chien-paos are playing Palkia. So you get away with that. And then the other like upgrades that you sub out Judge for Iono. And we eat into things like V-Guard Energy Count to fit in those Jet Energy, and we no longer need to play the Thornton or the Penny, we can just jet around our board instead. So you kind of steal some spaces and turn them into energies, which is nice, which gives us that space and that leeway to play Quad Stadium and Pump, which is cool to see. But yeah, looking like a solid 60. The good news about Lugia, especially if you stick with Single Strike, is that we have like such a tried and trusted deck list that we can make direct upgrades from without it being like too much difficulty mentally. So you are basically playing the same thing that you played last format, just with a few like tiny changes. We go on to the Tournament of Doom with another Guardy victory. So the first 2 wins were for Guardy players. This one a little bit interesting. Just playing that 1 stadium and just 1 worker Palpad, that is really cheeky. I feel like there are certainly going to be path-based decks in the game. I can't agree with just 1 stadium card. I just can't be on board with that. But it's let you fit in this Luxray, I suppose, is the idea here. And you have double reversal. Definitely makes the Gardevoir more powerful as well. But yeah, I can't on good conscience be on board with one collapsed as your only stadium. It's so punishing when there are going to be Judge Path decks. I mean, we know that Guard is going to be like the most popular deck, so there's going to be Judge Path response in format for sure. A chien-pao.palkia came in 2nd place here. Have I just gone past it? Yeah. Just one of them in top 8, but one did get 9th, I suppose. And this time it's Lost City, Skaters Park again. And it's that sort of conventional support count. This looks like a really solid list. It's playing the Articuno as another tech single prize Pokemon. It's playing the double rope as well as the park. I think that's definitely right. I think it's between like 1 rope, 1 switch and Skaters Park, or like you play either rope switch and double Skaters Park. It's like that way round. So you have 3 total like pivots cards, I think, is where I want to land on the deck. So looking pretty solid. We have a Lugia. This is another colorless build, again playing those Bravery Charms. This one's fitting in Great Balls instead of Nests. A little bit of a gamble, but hey-ho. And we have the Lost Vacuum in here as well. Surprising to see Lost Vacuum. I suppose you are kind of scuffed by Bravery Charm. So it does make some sense. Are there any other tools that you're that worried about? Because this is like a lower damage output build, right? Sometimes if you see a Bravery Charm go onto a Snorlax or like onto a chien-pao or something, you are in danger. So maybe vacuuming those away is kind of the value that you see over just playing another Mesagoza for consistency. That's really the only debate card. Oh, and it's playing Drapion for a more secure Mew, which I think is completely fine for the colourless build. We then have... What is this? Is this just a misreport of Zoroark? It has to be, right? Yeah, so it's a Zoroark build. So let's have a look at our Stage 1 package. We have the Hisuian Zoro, which can give you a means around Duraludon, I suppose. I was trying out the Copium Jirachi, but this is, I guess, more of a headache for them, especially when you are playing higher Iono now. Even if there are, like, one switch, one rope in Arcturas or whatnot, you have a way around that. It has the Trevenant, which gives you some grass type coverage, which is relevant with T-Tar still around, with Umbreon, and with Ting-Lu, actually. And Ting-Lu's an awkward matchup for Zoro, right? You have one hit KO potential via Flapple, but also via Trev, which is kind of good. But you need to try and boss to actually allow yourself to use Phantom Transformation. And, you know, you have the upside of its ability. Just in general cases, where if your opponent knocks out with a V, they don't take any prize cards for it. So you can try and two-shot stuff a little bit more comfortably and make life an issue for the opponents. What else are we seeing here? Still a couple Serenas just to add to that overall draw count, I suppose. Roseanne's backup is super interesting. Not sure how strong I think that is, but just with gifts and reversals, I think there's also that juggle going on. I think it's harder to play Slowbro if you don't play double turbo, though. I think at least a couple DT is good just for that alone. Especially with Roseanne's backup, I don't know why you wouldn't just play 3 gift and 1 DTE, just to make this stronger. It's also really weird to play Electivire, but not have the follow-up of Drifblim or Miss Magius combo. It's just, like, really weird to play that combination on its own, I think. Huh. The Ball Search is also interesting, adding Great Balls into the mix. And, like, no VIP pass. I suppose it's playing Artisan Basculin as the combo, is the idea. Yeah, definitely some interesting strats going on with the Zoro there. We have our first Lost Zone box. This is... Okay, wow, interesting. So it's like an almost all one prize Zama Lost box, but it has the big Copperaja, the big schnoz coming in. Super interesting. This is a beefcake of a Pokemon, and Nosequake is really high damage output. We all know the stats are really good on this card, it's just how you integrate it. It feels weird to just have a 1-1 line because they become such important cards to Flower Select into. And this deck typically already has quite high damage output just from Zam. But, hey, Copperaja is a very powerful card. It's not easy to spam the card because it self-damages your own board quite a bit, but tapping into that higher damage output and being a really annoying to deal with Pokemon is solid. Yeah, that's super interesting. Very cool. We then have the Guardy list. This is a really interesting one because it's like basically old Guardy that just entered a new tournament and carried on doing well. Are there any new cards? No? New Bosses Orders artwork? That's the only change? This is just an old list. This is just Benry's list, right? Hey-ho. Well done. Why? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. We have an Arc Drago, which does get to the very cheeky new Noivern EX, which I definitely want to try, actually. The Dominating Echo, 140 and the opponent can't play Special Energy or Stadiums from the hand, lets you do some quite annoying things. You see only one path in the deck, but I think the intention is that you can try and lock this in against Guardy, force them to find their worker. I think it probably works better by having multiple path around, so that once they've played their worker, then you make them chase their pad and then worker again, that sort of thing. But definitely an annoying card to deal with. We have a Leafy Camo Poncho in here as well. That's kind of wild. Is the idea because you're using Goodra that you poncho the other thing on board, so you make it hard for the opponents? One cool thing about Regidrago is that you get Squawk now as well, which can be extra discard synergy in the opening stages for these stage 1s. Got the Aromas to try and help out. One cheeky Pokestop. Some interesting stuff. It is definitely a juggle, but you know what? I think there's something there with the Noivern Drago package. It's definitely something I'm going to explore, because this text cannot be disrespected. It's very powerful, I think. Specifically against Guardy, I think it's powerful. We then have Lost Zone Tina as well, with the hijinks with Jet Energy to get faster lost zonage. Really good for Abyss Seeking plays, really good for early cram pressure plays. Lets you just sort of streamline your switching outs. Some other interesting inclusions include the Thornton and the Echoing Horn, so that's kind of wild. And seeing Energy Recycler, even though we have Rod in format now. Super interesting. Path is like very common in New Age Tinas. Now that you play Jets, you can't play the Temple. So that's kind of safe. It's so weird to see Recycler Clara double roll. That's so much recovery. Surely there's a space there to be made. We'd really light on Ball Search as well, just 2 Nest. I'd definitely like to see like the Horn or like the Clara or Recycler becoming a Nest. I want to make a consistency slot out of this. But I really like Giratina in this format. I think the Jets make a real notable impact and definitely improve the archetype in general. And we're seeing a number of archetypes now where it's like, we've got Guardy, we've got chien-pao, we've got Lugia. All of these decks do the same thing in that they can be aggressive enough to one-hit KO through stuff when it has to, and then it can pivot back to a single prize deck at different points in the game. And I think all these decks do that mix and match really, really well in the formats, and that's what sort of keeps them in the mix, I think, for being potential top-tier decks. We then move on to the Hoarders Circuit Series 30, where 3 of the 4 top decks are Guardy. So, yeah, Guardy really is super powerful, this format. We see another 1 stadium list. Save me from this. This cannot be correct. I'm so mad. It's just, you know, it's irresponsible, you guys. It's just an irresponsible card choice. You know what I mean? You're gonna get punished for it. Well done for not and getting this insane record, but trust me, when we get to NAIC, people will be out here path judging you and making life harder. This list is at least playing the extra stadium card, which I'm happy to see. This is a really nice 60, actually. I like this a lot. I'm definitely debating the boss versus Serena thing myself. Like, if you just play 2 boss or 1 boss Serena, you play the Power Pad already, so you have good coverage, and you have Crest for some little bit of, like, bench tickle when you need to. The double reversal is interesting as well, versus just playing the 11th energy. Obviously such a powerful card, and obviously you are behind in the game quite often, so you do get brainwave value quite nicely. Seems pretty cool. It's wild that I'm thinking in my head that I want to go to 3 stadiums, and other people are cutting down to 1. I find that so wacky. Really nice list there, though, from MP. We then have another list with, oh wow, really interesting supporter lineup here. So this one is fitting in the second reversal in the Luxray package, but playing the Penny still, which is super weird to me. Surely it's time for that to go. Especially when you're playing double collapsed already. That's like so much pickup and like damage removal. It's playing just the 1 research and it's playing 1 Avery as well. Avery to try and help out Mirror, perhaps? It's also playing the Mirage Step. Yeah, some really interesting choices here. Just 1 research. So weird. And still just 2, like, low count of candy, I suppose. Yeah, a lot of interesting spaces here. I think the Penny is, like, old news now more often than not, but hey-ho. We have a Ting Lu making it into the top 4. Looks like a pretty straightforward streamline list. I think a lot of people sort of take this list as well. Spoiler alert for other decent finishes. Now, when I saw Ting Lu doing well with no judge, I really had to scratch my head, because I think at the end of the day, this is a cheesy deck. This deck doesn't want the opponent to play the game. That's obviously its intention with its ability. Why would you not try and pair this with judge? I find it so weird. At least a couple judge, right? I also think 2 Squawk is like core, because every game you play with this deck, you turn 1 Squawk. Like, that is the deck in a nutshell. So yeah. It's so weird to play Suian over, like, 2nd Squawk. That's really bizarre. And it's playing Greninja over Alakazam as well. I mean, Greninja's a good draw, so I can't argue with, like, drawing more cards. But you can do such cool plays with Alakazam. I need to try out more Greninja, because, like, who's to say... Like, Greninja is just a good card in general, right? So you don't always see the value of it, but I think it helps your Dino Cry quite often. But yeah, I want to see some Judge in here. I want to see a mix and match of Judge and Iono for sure. Because you're a cheesy deck. Just lean into the fact that you crumb people. That's like your whole thing. I don't get why you wouldn't. We have Giratina up next. It's playing as high as 3 Jets, and it's still playing Temple. That's interesting. I suppose oftentimes you will be behind enough against Lugia that you still have to go for Roxanne Temple over Roxanne Path. But this looks like a really nice streamlined, with like just a naturally higher counter energy, so just the 2 Rod for recycle. I think that makes a good amount of sense. Just cash in on your Greninja while you can. Yeah, I like this list a lot. This seems really good. We then have an Arctina. I still feel like this is a very solid archetype. Interesting cards in this one, though. So we have the usual suspects, and then we see Zacian V, so you can raw out your energy, so you don't require turn 1 attachment as much. But then you also play the Squawk, which is trying to help you make that push, which is strange. That's a lot of, like, easy bench-sitting dudes that can be mowed down for easy prize cards. Makes me a little bit nervous to play both of these, because they're both trying to do a similar thing, right? You're trying to end up with Arc Attachment. Happy days. I suppose there are some occasions where Zacian allows you to attach to 2 different things turn 1 by just manually attaching them roaring somewhere else, so then you're protecting around boss a little bit more, so you don't have to, like, commit your Starbirth to Raihan, I suppose. But that's still such a good, like, that's still such a best case scenario where you got Arc, Energy, Zacian. And the Squawk sort of is trying to help that push anyway. It's so, like, in that situation, would you search for the Zacian or search for the Squawk? It's such a weird thing to think about. You have to pick one of those. I don't think you should be playing both. Because they'll never come down in the same occasion, right? So then what's the point in the other one? Yeah, that's really weird to think about. But we know that Arctina is very strong. I do think Arctina is really bad inherently into chien-pao backs. So I am personally a believer of the Flying Peak package, the 1/1. Just a small tidbit, because I have been trying to judge Path Crumb people. You know that for sure. We see a Kyogre Lost Box. It's playing the Zinnia's Resolve to try and dig deeper into the deck. Has just the 1 Pokestop, but has the Artisans. Has just Dragonite for the Forest Seal Stone, get to 7, Tempo, Vomit kind of combo. Has to still play the Recyclers. I'm surprised it plays Double Clara and no Rods. Rod is just so good still, right? This seems very like a minimalist, haven't really changed much from the last set kind of build. Then we have a chien-pao in top 8. Oh wow, okay, it's playing the... Oh my goodness! Okay, so it plays the combo! You got the Earth and Seal Stone, put everything down to 1 hundo, and then which part of the body is this attack? Is it this one? Nope. It is this one. Deal 100 to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So you got a big wombo combo going on here to try and set everything down and then blow them all up. Kind of funky. I'm surprised that we see no cancelling Cologne, because you just get blocked quite often from your thing, right? I do quite like Squawk in this deck, though. The more I've thought about chien-pao, because I believe so much in the Pokestops, I'm starting to think that what I actually want is a Squawk, so that I can just pitch and see 6 fresh cards just to hit more VIP pass, because you are still a go-wide deck. So I'm thinking I want to try out Squawk in general. If I learn anything from this build, it's that I like Squawk in Chen backs just to get into the game. But what a wonky combo. Your other attacks are like not that strong, right? 180, they can't retreat. You can see your opponent's hand, which informs some Iono plays, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, it's a combo fun build of the deck, right? But surely can't be the viable way to play the strategy. Cool, though. Pretty cool. We move on to Moji's Dojo Season 2, where a Giratina was able to win. Like I said, I'm really on board with Giratina this set. I think it does pole vault its way easily into, like... There's definite reasons to play it over Lost Box, and I think last set there was no reason to play this deck over Lost Box, but now there's so many reasons to. Now you're a Path, like, Hand Disruption deck that we can see here, 3 Path even, with Rox Iono, and you have early consistent pressure, and you have beat stick potential. So it ticks so many boxes for me, and the Jet Energy is low-key like a massive buff, really is a massive buff to the deck. So I wouldn't be surprised to see more Giratinas do very well. I think they're definitely a strong contender in this format. A lot of reasons to like it. Just the one recycler, one rod. Everything is looking pretty solid though. And we have such good baselines. Like, that's such a good list just to yoink and do well with, I think. We have another sort of turbo slash Kyogre build. This is incorporating the one sneaky Jet Energy. Just the one vacuum double forest. Sneaks in the Raikou as well as the Dragonite. Still playing those Claras. Interesting. I thought that people would be scrapping the Claras just for trainer cards if you are playing heavy Pokestop anyway, but there we go. We see James bringing some Guardy to the table, a very consistent looking Guardy. With the high stadium count, you love to see it. We know what's up. Yeah, not really any clog in this one. This is a really nice, really happy with the ball search, really happy with the supporter lineup. Artisan lets you play the game, and I think James even said that he couldn't play Temple because it was bugged, so probably would have just played a 3-stadium split, but didn't to avoid scuffed games. Basically, we know James he knows what he's doing, right? We have a interesting Kyogre plus Molt Lost Box that also has Snorlax, so can play a tempo game, can work towards the bottom for big Kyogre combo plays. Obviously, type coverage is important for the Moltres part of things. This is like the Moffat EUIC 60. Quite similar. No real new cards at all, actually. So just kind of running it back, doing pretty well. We have United Wings getting 6-1. Cannot believe it. Look at this. Okay. So it's got the wings. I haven't done a video on this deck yet, actually. So you have your lightning coverage, your dark type coverage. You have your Ditto, so you can reach with a darkness energy attached to Ditto. You can hit 240, right? If all of these goody gumdrops are in the bin, and then you can like rescue carrier back the Ditto. You have late game push of Molt as well with a 1 Clara 1 Palpad package, and you can buddy catch the Clara for when you need to. Do you have any free retreaters to make that happen a little bit more? No. Oh, you have Beach Court and 2 Rope. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting support account. You can see that discard synergy is really important. Sorry for scratching my eyes. I have really bad hay fever. But yeah, the double Hisuian seems okay. Refinement is your sort of mid-game means of binning these chaps, I suppose. I mean, we all know that this is going to be horrific against Lost Zone box, so it's only ever going to be like mid-tier at best, but there are selling points. I mean, if you look at the matchups, what are we battering? Some chien-paos, some Guardies. Okay, not bad, not bad. Basically dodged Lost Zone, and then as soon as it hit the Giratina, it lost immediately. Seems good. We have another Giratina. This one's incorporating belt over gloves. Interesting. Yeah, really like this as well. Very thick on the energy count. I'm kind of on board with thick energy and just 2 rod. Kind of on board with that. Yeah, looking very solid. Have a chien-pao. This one, man, Bravery Charm. See, the more I've played chien-pao.palkia, the more terrified I am of its opening turns, and I don't think I'll ever make the space for Bravery Charm into the deck. I just don't think I ever make that slot. Like, this deck's not even playing Manaphy. Instead, it's playing Bravery Charm. I suppose you can charm a Frigibax and stay out of range of a Greninja. That's one way of doing it. Man, so wild that you think that you have the space for this when I'm just like tearing my hair out for so many spaces. So crazy. Okay. And then we have, what's this? A Tinkertuff EX. Tinkerton EX, I should say. So Big Hammer does 30x the amount of cards in your hand, so the idea is draw. So we have the Gather Materials Tinkerton, discard 1, draw 3, but also has that Milotic package in here, so your opponent cannot disrupt your hand is the idea. That's pretty cool. You've got early game draw from Rotom, bit of a package going on there. You've got Radiant Jirachi that you can retreat into in the opening stages, I suppose. Got the Jax. Oh man, hilarious. What else we got? The Thornton. Wow. Thornton out of Rotom. That's kind of interesting. As the Forest Seal Stone for Rotom as well. Some cool synergy going on here. This is a cool list for sure. Has Psych Energy, so you can use some of these other attacks, I suppose. And just for retreating. I mean, it's probably not going to be super viable, but sometimes it just gets rolling enough that it beats things, I suppose. We go on to Pumpkin Amy's Weekly, and it's a Lost Zone box that was winning. Okay, interesting. So we have a Kyogre build that is also incorporating the Luxray. So you have Mirage Gate Luxray plays, where you are behind on prize cards, you gain that type coverage. Still is choosing to play the Raikou as well, so quite a lot of lightning within the list. And yeah, this one is just playing the one Clara and is incorporating these rods, so kind of updated a little bit. Just for extra stop synergy, I suppose, is the idea. Pretty cool. We have Hisuian Zoroark making second place. What year is it? But of course, who could forget the upgrades of Squawkabilly EX in the list? So you have more dig potential to find your basics. Of course, that's what it was missing all along. Okay, I guess. Still a combo deck. Still a wonky deck. Still fun. Cool. We have our first Fusion Mew, I want to say. And yeah, straight away we have the Ice Cube. So for those who haven't seen any of the Japanese nationals yet or anything, Block Slider can be used to sort of snipe off some early basics. And most notably, if the opponent gets early Spiritomb down against you, you can try and get this combo off and just knock it out early. And just deal with it as soon as possible. That's why you see Lost City as well, so you can just block out that Spiritomb and deal with it immediately. So yeah, Lost City not just for Drapion now, but also for Spiritomb, which is quite funny. Has the 1 Iono, 1 Judge, and then just, other than that, is basically like old times. But Fusion build is much more likely to be prevalent this set, simply because Spiritomb exists. We haven't seen much Spiritomb in deck lists, mind you, but they are around, and there's the threat of it. And as soon as there's the threat of it, you probably need to respect that option, because your deck completely shuts down to 1 tech card otherwise. Now, this is a list I can get behind. This is a really good 60, I think. This is really close to where I'm at with my cross-switcher Pokestop build. Yeah, I like this one a lot. Still has the Velocity, still has the Cologne. Decent amount of Ball Search. What are we missing? So this plays no Rod, I suppose. Bit risky with the Pokestops, but I guess you're playing higher counts of the Mons anyway. Only 2 Friggy, 2 backs, I suppose, is a bit scary. Yeah, I like this. This is very streamlined. The only thing I don't like is 1 Iono. You gotta play more than 1 Iono. It's such a strong card. And if it gets stopped away, you're just so sad. A lot of that I do like, though. I think we're on the right lines with Pokestop, personally. See another Giratina. This one's still playing the Drapion rather than playing Spiritomb. Other than that, looking pretty streamlined, pretty solid. We have Guardy with the double reversal, playing Forest Seal Stone Zacian package. Surely this is diminishing returns when you only have 1V in the deck list now. I think it made sense when you played double Zacian and Fish, but now surely not. It's just so hard to get them at the same time, you know? When you're constantly Iono'd as well by the opponent. We have an... Oh wow, look at this, it's Arceus Meowscarada. So, if ever there was a way of making Meowscarada work, I do think it's alongside Arc, just because Arc is strong, and it can also pull grass energies out for you, so you can use the likes of Superior and Energy Retrieval. Look at this lineup of supporters, what is going on? It's 7 one-offs? There's no way! How crazy is that? 7 one-off supporters. My goodness. And really thick on the candy as well. What a wild list. Definitely fun, if nothing else. And then we have a Lost Zone box. What? Gotta read a card. Okay, it's just the... Okay. I forgot this was still in format, I'll be honest with you. Okay, quite a V-heavy list of... Oh no, I guess it's combo Lost Box, where you have multi-stones going on. Incorporating an Artisan. I think a lot of people are making this edition. playing the rods as well. I guess metal type coverage is something that you're looking for chien-pao, is the idea. And then it's also good late game beat stickery, I suppose. And I guess it's early dig. It's just a decent card, I suppose. Not bad. Right, we move on to the Deck Out Mondays, where another Lost Box ends up winning. This is a single prize Kyogre approach, where we have Zama and Lax as sort of that higher damage output threshold, incorporating Rod and Recycler, which is pretty cool. Yeah, looking like a very decent Kyogre build. It looks like it beat Guardy. I think we've already seen MP do well with this exact same list. Actually, no, it's different because now he's playing Miriam and Resolve. So experimenting with the supporters quite a bit, playing no research in this list. So a little bit of experimentation going on there from MP. Still looking pretty good though. Still landing on the 10-2 split of energy, even without Luxray. We see more colourless. I'm really surprised that colourless is all playing the Bravery Charms, because throughout my testing with the colourless build, I've not always been playing Braveries. But it seems like they're quite popular. And is doing well, so that's cool. And from Japanese players as well, which makes me think they know something I don't, because they've been playing the format more. We see the fusion build. It's playing some paths as well. Yeah, just definitely a decent juggle. I think everyone will make this Ice Cube adaptation just because it did well in Japanese Nats. This one is kind of more old school. As soon as I say everyone's going to be playing it, but you can still play the Deoxys combo, I suppose. Seems pretty good. That's from Cash. We have another okay, Tinkaton Guardy. Who needs my Lotic when I could just draw more again? Oh, it's genius. Oh, it has the reversal combo to try and brainwave people as well, I suppose. And it works with Special Hammer, actually. Look at that. Look at the synergy. Only one of these. That's really weird to play 3-1 split like this. Huh. I guess you just want to hit this first and just get any amount of damage in. Yeah, I guess drawing more is the answer. Genius. This is playing the heavy fog crystal as well as all the other search. Kinda spicy. Kinda crazy. You then have Lost Box. Yeah, looks like Turbo with the big usual suspects. Is there any new cards? Yeah, Artisans. I do think we have to be a little bit careful by cutting Beach Courts. They are such strong cards. When your manual attachment often has to go on to the likes of your Dragonite or your Greninja and whatnot, you have to be a little bit careful of that. More colours doing well. Looks like everyone's just playing the Bravery Charms. What am I missing, guys? The Braveries, I feel like they're cuttable, but everyone seems to be playing them. They essentially take the earn spaces of the single strike build, but they could just be consistency slots. You never know, you know? Anyway, we're getting through. We have Late Nights 107. And this one was cut short because PCG Live had weird updates going on or something. Just breaking as always. But looks like where we were at in the standings at the time had a double stone Thanos build of Lost Box doing well, with one Artisan snuck into the list and some rods. We have a 6-0 Rapid Strike box, which is once again playing that Spiritomb. Squawk is really good in this deck as well, I think, just to get into the game. But it's also playing Giacomo. The idea being that they're trying to, they being the new player, they fusion their Spiritombs. No, they fusion their Genesects to unlock Spiritomb, and then you Giacomo a ton of their fusion energy in one go. Is the idea. It's really nice to not have to play Drapions, because Drapions are such annoying Pokemon to like start with in the matchup, in like any matchup that isn't Mew. Whereas Spiritomb is just like fine to start at any point. You can even put it into your hand as well if you want to get it off the board, because this is actually quite a tight on space deck list, you know. So yeah, looks like Rapid Strike is low-key getting a bit of a buff from the Spiritomb, and just Iono being in the deck is nice. Have a fusion build, just one. Oh no, sorry, I thought this was Sparkle. Just 2 Sparkles, 1 Avery coming in. It's playing the Vitality Band as well to push him into 220 into EX Pokemon like chien-pao, for example. It's playing the Cave to help out against Tinglu players, I suppose. Looks pretty good. We actually have a Tinglu in top 4. Yeah, interesting. Again, no Judge. I think Judge is so strong in this deck. You gotta believe me. You gotta believe me. Trust me, it's so good. The deck is a cheese deck. It's not a real deck. It's a I hope you brick off of turn 1 deck. Thanks to my ability lock and this Judge that I throw at you. It's so much less effective as Iono. I promise you that. We have a Arctina that's incorporating Spiritomb as another single prize headache annoyance. It's actually nice for a deck like this to have just extra single prize Pokemon to throw at the opponents if you've gone second, so that's also kind of cool, and it's like just extra annoyance for Mew players, right? I'm still a believer that Flying Peak is good just because your chien-pao matchup is so bad without it. Another Goodra playing Tomb, so we are starting to see some Tombs in and around. This is similar to what we have seen already earlier on. We have a Guardy playing the fish. We've seen a lot less fish recently. Just with like better, I think because you just have more early game good cards that are supporters, you need the fish a little bit less, right? Because before we had annoying cards like Judge and Roxanne that were just dead cards in the opening, essentially. Well, not quite dead in terms of Judge, but a lot worse. So having to spend your Ball Search to actually get like a power research was much more relevant. Whereas when you just have these naturally higher counts of good supporters, you just get into them a little bit more. Surprised to just see the one boss. But otherwise looking pretty solid. And then we have a Lost Box in top 8 again. And this is another Turbo build. Oh no, it's a Kyogre build, I should say. Another Kyogre build. Still playing the double Clara, but is incorporating one Rod. So minimalistic changes for sure, but still good. We then have the other Late Night, which did go to fruition, where 3 of the top 4 were Lost Box decks. So Lost Box still hanging on in there. We'll also look at the breakdown of deck usage. This is a single prize Kyogre, very simplistic, very streamlined list. Really nice to see this list, actually. I think this is a really good starting point for anyone wanting to play this. Looks very good to me. Went 15-2, that's a really good record. Then we have a Turbo build. 1 Pokestop, 1 Artisan, playing the Shoes. Also looking very solid. We then have another Turbo build, again with Shoes. So all the Lost Boxes doing very well, really strong records as well. Have a Guardian top 4, falling to one of the Lost Boxes. This one's playing Squawk as well, wow. Extra discard synergy, extra turn 1 push. It's like a Luminion, but you can use it going first. Broken. Actually, is that better? It's like, surely it's better than the fish then, right? I mean, there's upside in mid-game fishing for stuff. Like, I was going to say Worker, but no, you're getting pathed. But just like digging for like your one-off boss or things that you Palpad back, you can insta-use them. Especially a list that plays so many one-off supporters, I think you would like Luminion more, but the upside of going first and being able to Squawk is valid, I think. So that's interesting. Still playing the double Zash. Still playing Supporter Recovery, as well as 1 Rod. That's a lot of Pokemon Recovery if you need it. It's playing the double Temple as well. I suppose it makes sense to play Forest if you're a double Doggo. Just 2 rare candies, though. That's really low. We have a Lugia. It's another Colorless build. So Colorless been doing really well. I don't know if it's just like week 1 experimentation versus like just single strike, or if this is just like far better and there's no Dura, because Dura sucks in an Iono format. I'm sorry to tell you. We haven't seen any Dura today, and that's because Arc Dura stinks. It's so bad in a format with Iono. And with one-hit KO decks like chien-pao. It's like really bad into those decks. So I think Arc Dura is dead. Which is good for Colorless Lugia, right? But maybe Single Strike Lugia's play Dura again. Alright, okay. It's a whole rabbit hole I could get into. So this chien-pao is playing Arceus in here. The idea being that you can try and turn 2 Starburst for combos, be it like early Boss Cologne play, or if it's Candy Backs play, something like that is the idea. So many of these lists are playing 1 Iono. I'll never understand. It's so... Look, Iono is bussin'. Okay. Play at least 2 copies, even in aggressive decks, I think. If you're not Lost Box, play at least 2 Ionos, I think is my moral of the story. You gotta do it. It's so core. It's so crucial. A few other upsides to Arceus is that you can power it up with Super Cold and attack with it. And it has a bigger body than Palkia if ever you're up against decks that play Luxray Reversal, right? Because it just doesn't work against us anywhere near as well. So it can be a chunky 2-prize attacking threat if you need it to be. But Starbirth is meant to be this, like, catch-all, let me just have a good turn 2 kind of card as long as I hit my Ultra Ball, is the idea. Which we have seen before a few times in Japan, so maybe it's okay. I still feel like Palkia is probably just better, but yeah. We have another fusion build doing well. It's Mew at this point, like, what can I say? Mew's still good. Mew's still finding a way. And then we do have another Colorless build, so yeah, Colorless build's going crazy. Really broken. I think a lot of people were expecting that Single Strike was going to be better, but the amount of times I've seen Colorless do well, absolutely insane. Like, I looked at one Single Strike today and then just all Colorless other than that. Let's have a look at the breakdown then. Gardevoir most popular, then chien-pao, with quite a low overall win rate. Can you see that here? Just 42% overall. I think that's an indication that the deck is still being figured out. We've seen so much variety in almost every list that we've seen today. But also it is on the inconsistent side, and I think that's what needs to be ironed out over the next few weeks. I think there's time before NAIC, and I think the power's there for chien-pao. But I think that ironing process is going to still be underway compared to things that are more discovered, like Gardevoir's more discovered, Giratina, Lost Box, Lugia. These other decks that hang in the top, they have such obvious and easy inclusions from the new sets that they're basically like playing the old set with upgrades, whereas chien-pao obviously has to figure out so much more. Tinglu, also quite a low win rate, but that's because everyone's playing Iono and not Judge. For goodness sake, when will you ever watch an OmniPoke video? Please! Fusion Mew, really high win rates, even though it's not that popular. Also Lost Zone Box with a really high win rate overall, and Giratina as well. Some Arctina not doing too great, but in the mix. Intel Urshi, we have seen a few Spike events, but it's not got that high of a win rate overall. Reversal Guardi as well, really low win rates. This is a hard deck to play, so it doesn't surprise me that it's that low, but it is also less consistent than regular Guardi, so do bear that in mind. It is somewhat of a high roll deck, I think, in my mind. And look at this, proving my point. Arcta are terribly low win rates. Well, not terribly low, but low. And that's because you get Iono'd, you lose the game. It's that build. We do actually have one more tournament to look at, but I wanted to look at the overall breakdown of the late night, because that was the most attended tournament. We do have a chien-pao that actually won and got 6-0. Love to see it. And it's a build that had space for Bravery Charm. I can't believe it. And it's playing no big barrel either. It just has no way around. If you get Iono'd, you get Iono'd. Crazy. Yeah, I guess it's a thing. You can go without the barrel if you want to. We have a Guardian second place. With the full 4 Foggers, Fogchamp. Love to see that. What's it made space for? Oh, it only plays 2 Candy. Okay. We have some Tinas in top 4. Wow, making the space for the Vulpix. Do you really need this? Genuine question, because I feel like your Guardian matchup is okay without this, right? You're trying to just get to 10 faster, right? I feel like this is not the way, personally. I think you've just added Clunk for no reason. And then we have a more streamlined build, which I respect a little bit more. Interesting to see the split of 2 rocks, 1 Iono. It shows you how terrified Tina is of Ionoing itself down to like 3 cards. That's kind of funny. I definitely like Roxanne plus Iono. I just didn't expect it to be that way round, if that makes sense. We have a quad Tina that plays Charizard Box of Disaster. What is going on? What is this? Playing triple path 2 Vacuum, so you can late game Vacuum Charizard. What is this? I mean, Box of Disaster can go onto your Arceus to create a headache for Guardi, I suppose. Do you really beat enough decks just going Judge Path? I guess, is Box of Disaster good against chien-pao as well? I guess it is, right? Broken Box. Let's go. Arc Box. Spicy. We have Mew, Fusion Strike doing well. I guess, man, thinking of Box of Disaster again, it even sets up Charizard into VMAXs, right? With the damage counters you put on stuff. Actually genius. Actually Galaxy Brain. This is why I love seeing Japanese players playing in these events, because we get insights that you wouldn't from people who have played the format for a long, like much longer than we have. We have a Turbo Lost Box playing Quad Rod. Quad? The Quad Rod? Surely not. That's so many rods. We didn't do that back in the day with Ordinary Rod. So many rods. Then we have a Guardy. Yeah, looking pretty routine and normal. So let's have a look, if I can, at the decks right now. And the overall win rate of these sorts of decks. So Gardevoir isn't that like complete bonkers S tier. It's really high in popularity, and it is having some really high placements, but it still has that like stage 2-iness, hard to playness of the archetype that it's still fairly fair. I think it probably is the strongest deck in the game, but isn't like out there on its own on this pedestal. We've seen wins from chien-pao today, we've seen wins from Lost Box, from Giratina, from other things, so other things are definitely in the mix. Fusion Mew doing really well in its overall win percentage so far in Paldea Evolved. Giratina doing really well as well. Overall, Tinglu surprisingly high for me, to be honest with you. And Arctina still surprisingly high in its win rates based on how little it's played, I guess. And Reversal Guardy, not that low overall actually, but still is a thing. I feel like from what I'm seeing, Arctur is being pushed out of the meta, as I kind of expected, just because there's another one-hit KO deck on the block. Guardy has an easier time one-hit KOing the deck than it did previously. And Iono crumbs it for... like, every deck plays Iono, and they can all crumb Arctura these days. So it doesn't surprise me that that's falling out of the game. Pretty much every deck needs to play an engine now. And if you're not doing that, you're just going to lose to Iono. But yeah, chien-pao doing pretty well. A few more results than some people expected, perhaps. And it's still being figured out. That's the thing. I think it only gets stronger from now. I think Guardy, probably within 3 cards of like the optimal 60. Lost Zone Box is very close. Giratina very close. Fusion Strike pretty close, I think, as well. Like, all of these decks are very close to ironed out perfect 60s, and they're at their ceiling right now. Whereas chien-pao, I think it can go up another level and find a new ceiling. Once we get that list that's just like makes the deck click a little bit more, I think it could end up being probably not the strongest deck, but like well cementing itself in like probably top 3 alongside like Guardy Lost Box, I think. But yeah, week 1 thoughts. A lot of things to go over, a lot of good testing to be done. I am focusing a lot of my time on chien-pao specifically, just because I think it has a lot of good elements to it, and because of that unsolved nature of it, it's really intriguing me. But let me know your thoughts down below for today's video, and I'll see you tomorrow for another one. Cheers.